Thank you for joining us for today's webcast. Our topic is coaching your way to success. Now, let me take a moment to introduce today's speaker. Margo Hoyt is the Managing Director and Senior Vice President of LHH's Talent and Leadership Development Practice. She has been working in the leadership and organizational development space for more than 30 years. Margo has worked extensively in organizational transformation and change and consults with leaders and teams to enhance their effectiveness and make shifts for the future. Over to you, Margo.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and welcome everybody. So great to have you with me today. Really looking forward to spending about the next 57 minutes together. I'm going to share some ideas with you, and then, as Sarah said, we're going to open it up for what I hope to be a robust question and answer period. So start with the questions as soon as you're able to. Today, we're going to talk about an opportunity for organizations to really thrive through coaching for success. I'm going to share with you some of the things that LHH Knightsbridge has been learning about leadership requirements. I'm going to talk to you about what is coaching and the opportunity to go up the maturity curve for creating a coaching culture. And of course, we'll share some ideas about how do you build those coaching capabilities within your organizations and then sustain the focus on it so that you have a long-term, opportunity for coaching in your organizations. Now, some of you know LHH Knightsbridge, LHH formerly known as LHH Knightsbridge, as we go through our brand transition through the executive search part of our business, where we have executive search, retained search, and interim placements. Many of you know us through the talent and leadership development practice, which is the practice that I have the pleasure of leading in Canada with coaching, of course, team coaching and team effectiveness, leadership development programs, succession, assessment, and career development programs. And others still might know this through our career transition practice. And that's where we help organizations and individuals move to their next career transition or through their career transition in an active placement model. However you know us, we're glad that you've joined us, and we're really looking forward to spending this time together. Now, coaching is underpinning all of the practices that I just talked about, and we have the pleasure globally of working with hundreds of thousands of leaders in a coaching relationship. Very much a privilege for us and something that we take very seriously. It also helps to inform us for this type of a presentation today. In Canada alone, we have over 100 coaches from coast to coast, ICF certified with leadership experience and ready to work with you and your leaders in a one-on-one way. Some in the more traditional approach, if you will, which of course is being delivered virtually, but also through a technology-enabled approach we call Ezra, and you can check that out on helloezra.com. But what I want to speak to you today to start is what we're learning about leadership requirements and where is that match with the coaching practices and the coaching capabilities that we're seeing in organizations. What is it about today and the requirements of leaders that lends itself really well to coaching and to building coaching skills? So let's start here. Let's start with the mindset that we're seeing really emerge for leaders. And there's 4 that we're highlighting here I'll go through today. One is around change agility. Now, change isn't new. We're going through a lot of it right now, but change is not new. What is different and what is new today is the continuous amount of it and how quickly it's happening. So today we're seeing that our organizations are having to shift and pivot very quickly. And as a result, that means that leaders and our teams are needing to shift and pivot really quickly. So change agility is really all about that personal and team continuously evolving and continuously improving. That's what we mean by the mindset related to change agility. When it comes to inclusivity and psychological safety, I've had very few conversations with executives across Canada that haven't included how important it is to create an inclusive environment, especially at this time. So that mindset about how do we make sure that no matter who the individual is, when they show up, they can be at their very best. They can contribute at their very best. They feel included and they feel safe to do so. So whether they're part of the BIPOC community, whether they're a woman or a man, from one of the 5 different generations that may be working in your organization, or from the LGBTQ+ community, how do we make sure as leaders that we're making an inclusive environment and a safe environment for people to be at their best? That's the second mindset we're seeing a lot of. The third one is the learning mindset. In short, shifting from a know-it-all to a learn-it-all. And by that, I mean that nobody knows what to do in the middle of a pandemic. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, if you will, for learning, and not to take it lightly at all. What it means is that we can't show up expecting to know the way forward and expecting to individually understand how things must go. But what we can do is show up and leverage what we have learned over time and be open and curious and able to learn more so that we can learn, so we can lead as we go forward. So that's really what we mean by the learning mindset. And for some, that's a big shift. For some, that's a small tweak. The fourth mindset that I wanted to share with you that we're seeing across the globe, and certainly here in Canada, is the external focus. Now, SWOT's not new. We've all been looking at external opportunities and threats as we think about our strategies and tactics for moving forward. But there's just so much going on externally that shift from an internal operational focus to really paying attention to what's going on in the geopolitical reign, what's going on, of course, with our economy, with the environment, is going to be ever so important as we move forward. So think about those, think about that in your own organization. I'd love you to take a moment and just reflect on whether or not those mindsets resonate for you. Are these things that you're having to pay attention to individually as a leader and for the leaders that work with and around you? We're certainly seeing this. I also want to talk to you about some of the capabilities that go along with these mindsets. There's 5 of them that have really been highlighted for us as we think about leadership today and leading through this pandemic. The first one is tough. It's about balancing difficult conversations with genuine empathy. It's one of those great and opportunities for us where, of course, we want to understand from an individual perspective what our teammates are going through, what they need, and what their context is. Are they homeschooling? Do they have people in their family that they're worried about their wellness? What is it that they're going through, and having that individual empathy? But we can't back away from the tough conversations. They still need to happen. So it's not only understanding what's going on in your organization or in your life, sorry. And it's not only about the tough conversations. It's how do we do them together? How do we make sure that we're still highlighting what needs to be focused on, not having only rosy conversations, but getting through some of the tough decisions that need to be made and getting through some of the conflict that you need to have, having those tough conversations. But holding the two at the same time. I know that's one that lots of leaders have talked to me about, and I also know that I am very aware of the opportunity to improve my capabilities in that area. The second capability that we hear a lot of is around social involvement and top-down communication. You know, when there isn't as much going on, it's a different type of thing, but right now we really need to be building trust in our organizations. And that comes from conversation. That comes from engaging people in the decision-making, getting their feedback and creating the path forward, related to a number of the mindsets that I just spoke about. But that capability to really engage others and not, or to resist the top-down, thou shalt do it this way, is a real opportunity for many leaders today. The third capability I wanted to share is around that regular and dynamic performance conversation. Now, some of it is tough conversation. There's no doubt about that, but some of it is really about reinforcing the positive performance that we're seeing as well. What's challenging today for many leaders is that your colleague's not right there or right there. Your colleague is through a screen perhaps, or sometimes through a screen and sometimes right there. Our environments and how we're working together is shifting, but our need to stay on top of performance has never been more important. So we need to be paying attention to how we build different muscles in different ways to have that regular and dynamic performance conversation. The fourth capability is creating a culture of well-being and to drive engagement and productivity through that. Again, if I was to one-line this, it would be, if you don't make time for your intellectual, your physical, your mental wellness, then at some point you're going to have to find time for illness. And that's challenging. Every executive that I've spoken to has said that one of their top 2 or 3 initiatives for their organization is to focus on employee well-being. the mental health, the physical health of each and every employee. And so this is something that we need to learn how to do in a very different way than perhaps we have before, and really making time and space for that, and learning how to have different kinds of conversations. The fifth capability, fostering teamwork. And again, teams are so important. I think 2021 could be the year of the team, because somehow we're needing to sustain performance again, perhaps in remote ways that we're not accustomed to. We're having to shift and create new teams and evolve, because while the pandemic has really brought a number of things to a halt, business goes on. Our organizations must continue and they must thrive. So teamwork is going to be incredibly important, and our leaders are needing to figure out how to do that. Again, sometimes with everyone in the same place, sometimes with people all in distributed locations, and sometimes with a mix of the two, enabling technology and really making a human connection. So that's a lot. When you think about the mindset, and then you think about all of these capabilities that we're asking our leaders to really step up to in this day and age, it's a lot. I know that when I put it all together, it's a whole lot. Who's stepping up to this challenge these days? I also know, when we go back to the conversation that we're having today around coaching, that coaching is going to be a tremendous way of supporting leaders to shift their mindsets, to build these capabilities, and to help us to be the best leaders that we can be. And it's also a way that we can improve these capabilities that we need as leaders. When we take a more coach-like approach, I think we have a better chance of having really good, robust performance conversations. I think we have a better chance of holding both the empathy and the tough conversations at the same time. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about. But let's start first with a poll. I'm going to engage Sarah to help me out with this. I'd love to know how these resonate for you and what it is in your organization that you're really focusing on from a capability perspective. So you should see on your screen now the poll. Maybe Sarah, you could walk people through how they fill this out.
Absolutely. So yes, you would have just seen a pop-up come up that asks you these poll questions. Feel free to click on the answer that's most appropriate for you. And then in a moment, once we are completed, I will share the results so that everyone is able to see the results of the poll.
Thanks. So I'll give you all a moment to do that. Now Sarah's going to close it down when she sees that most of you have had a chance to connect. You can choose up to 3. I know it would be hard to narrow this one down to just one choice.
Okay, we're still getting lots of responses, but I can end it now, Margo, if you like. We're almost there.
Okay, well, let's get everybody's input. Every vote counts. Isn't that what we're hearing these days? All right. Still coming in quickly, Sarah?
It's slowing down a bit, so.
Let's call it here. Okay, so what have we got? Very interesting. We see that the winner, if you will, is to create a culture of well-being to drive engagement and productivity. That is so consistent with conversations we're having, and as I said, about the importance of taking care of ourselves and taking care of each other. So really not surprised to see that right up there. And that teamwork, there I go. I'm calling it the year of the team 2021. How we're going to really make sure that we foster terrific teamwork and keep that going in such challenging environmental contexts. And I'm loving seeing that focus on the regular and dynamic performance conversations. It's so important. You know, we've been talking about having great performance conversations, not relying on the single annual performance review to give each other feedback, and to know that you're focusing on this in your organizations and helping leaders to have that regular feedback. You're not able to catch up in the kitchen and give each other a quick one liner here and there. They've got to be able to, really focus on it and put some structure around it. Thanks for sharing what you're focused on, and really interesting to see how coaching, again, comes back to that and how it will help us with those things. Before getting into exactly what we mean by some of these coaching skills, I'm going to share with you a little bit about what we learned. No confidentiality ever broken in what we share from our coaching conversations, but we do collect themes, and we look for themes from the leaders and the coaches that we're working with, as well as the organizations. And globally, you'll see some of the themes that are coming out here, that coaching is more important than ever. They're using coaching to really focus on balance and how they need to show up. And that it's more important than ever to learn to have coach-like conversations. So when we're coaching leaders and organizations right now, they're asking us to work with them on how to be a better coach-like leader. So really interesting to see how this data is coming together. And related to that would be the organizations. When we're working with them, they're telling us we want coaching to be provided in our organization because innovation is essential, because no one person has all the answers. We're trying to create these inclusive teams, many of the things we've just talked about. And we want, as organizations, to focus on creating this coaching culture and increasing the capability for coaching across the organization. We've been developing coach-like capabilities in organizations for many, many years. We've had programs to create ICF or aligned with the ICF to educate coaches. They've never been more popular than they are now on a global stage. And so I think that's really why this conversation is so important, and likely why all of you have shown up. And it speaks to this incredibly important time, I think, in the coaching industry, where there's a recognition that there's a need for coaching, that coaching will help you be better. When we pull executives and leaders in leadership development and in the operational side, we hear that one of the most effective ways to grow and develop leaders is through coaching. So we know that coaching is really effective. And I think there's also an awareness, because it's been part now of certainly the corporate fabric for many years, is that at some point in an executive's career or some point in a leader's career, as they're trying to transition to the next level or get oriented in a new role, that coaching will really help them. So I think that this is an incredibly interesting time for us as we see the environment telling us that leaders need to lead differently, and an acknowledgement that coaching really has a wonderful place in our organizations as a lever to support moving forward. When we talk about coaching, we often talk about 3 key principles, and I think that they apply here and they apply to many of the organizations who are creating coaching cultures as well. One is that everyone can be better with a coach. So in years gone by, we may have heard that coaching is only reserved for the very senior executives in an organization. And we know that today, everyone can be better with a coach, and there are ways and means of getting people, no matter who they are or what level they are in an organization, access to coaching. Secondly, that coaching isn't about fads, it's about the science. And so there's a lot of science that goes behind how do you be a great coach? What frameworks do you use? How do you work with your coachee, if you will? How do you do that in a really effective way? So it's not about fads. It's about understanding the psychology of it. Our practice was founded by psychologists more than 50 years ago, and we really hold true to that and try to embed in our coach approach that truth around science versus fad. And then finally, that it's all about the human connection, right? So we hear about how AI is going to come into coaching, terrific, and we certainly use and deploy technology to help us get access and to streamline processes around coaching. But at the core is that human connection, and I think that's why it's really important to provide leaders with choice when they're trying to connect with a coach and make sure that there really is a good fit. We do an awful lot of 2-dimension, and so being able to work with somebody that you really feel comfortable and can be open and transparent with is exceptionally important. So some of you come from, I know from looking at the registration list, coaching background. So there are coaches on the line. Some of you are in the HR or the OD or LD parts of your organizations, and others of you are CEOs and operational leaders across the organization. So in terms of just kind of leveling and aligning around what do we actually mean by coaching skills, I thought I'd share with you the coaching skills that we really focus on as the foundation, if you will, when we talk about creating coaching capability. For those of you who are familiar with it, core to coaching is like this first one, asking, not telling. It's not about telling somebody what to do. It's not like mentoring where you're sharing your wisdom and your advice from how you've grown in your own career and the experiences that you've had. It's really about asking terrifically powerful questions and listening. And then asking another question that will help the person move forward with their objectives and create an ability to continue to move forward on their own. So it's that ask, don't tell skill. And if you're creating a coaching culture in your organization, if you're creating leaders who are acting like coaches, you'll hear them have those conversations more often. What's next? What if you were to dream bigger? Who do you need to get on side? What are the potential roadblocks? How do we remove those? Really, rather than saying, here's the plan, now just go and do it. It's creating that. Reframing the picture is another one of those skills. Well, just trying to see things from different perspectives. As we implement change, as we think about moving forward and making decisions, we have to think about things from different perspectives. And great coaching encourages that and really facilitates how we do that to reframe the picture. It also helps to reframe the picture when we're talking about, working through issues and challenges with other people. So that reframing is an incredibly important coaching skill that you might see developing in your own organization. In the moment feedback, we've talked about the importance of feedback. Coaching really does build on that. In this situation, I've seen this great behavior. How do you make sure that you're giving both the positive feedback as well as helping them to understand when they've maybe not lived up to what they were trying to? I love the truth talk piece because there's something that's very special about being invited to coach another person. It's being invited to tell them the truth, that you care enough about how they're moving forward that you need to share somehow with them the real truth, right? You've shown up this way. This is getting in your way. Let me really have your back and give you this truth. So that truth talk is an important part of coaching. And again, sometimes it's difficult to do when you're in a reporting relationship, but if you're in an internal or an external coaching with more structure around it, absolutely part of it. And a coaching skill that's essential to really bringing the best to the relationship. Exploring possibilities and creating partnerships, again, all about moving forward, seeing opportunities around, how you might move forward, co-creating solutions together, and creating the partnerships and the connections that you need to do that to move forward. So this is what the coaching skills might look like, the coaching behaviors might look like if you're improving and advancing those with the leaders in your organization and advancing in terms of a coaching culture in your organization. Now I mentioned sort of building coaching capabilities and creating a coaching culture. It's a bit intermingling. The coaching culture is something, again, that has been researched and studied for many years. Here's some statistics from the ICF just pre-pandemic about how it really does. As you improve the coaching culture in your organization, as you see these kinds of conversations happening in your organization, and as you make coaching more accessible to the leaders in your organization, that there is an opportunity to improve profitability. There's an opportunity to increase retention and engagement with some of the most important populations of the organization, and of course to be seen as a high-performing organization. So those are some of the things that we've always looked for out of a coaching culture. And then I'll put up here for you a bit of an idea of what that maturity model looks like for coaching cultures. Because again, I think that some of you are probably not quite on this chart yet, exploring the ideas, wondering about how coaching might help your organization to advance. And others of you are well along this continuum. Some could be giving this presentation as well, or better than me perhaps, about how that's really embedded in everything that you do and how you operate. But just quickly, as we think about this, when it's limited, it's individual executive coaching, it's often an external, it's one or two at the top of the house that might be really benefiting from coaching. So you know what it is, you've introduced it in a limited way. Ad hoc starts to see coaching happening more often around the organization. There may be some coordination, there may not be, but again, a broader group, if you will, getting an opportunity to really benefit from coaching. When it starts to get into strategic, you start to see that building the internal coaching capability. So whether it's a team of internal coaches that are available to do really, structured coaching relationships, or it's leaders behaving more like coaches and really building those muscles, you start to see it being a really strategic part of how your organization is going to move forward and actually deliver on its strategies. When coaching becomes integrated and when it becomes part of how you operate, that's where you see yourselves up in the 4th and 5th stages of this maturity model. And it can be quite exciting to see how it's just natural that if you're a succession candidate, coaching comes with that. You know it's needed and you're aware of the opportunities that come with that for onboarding, for development programs in a variety of different communities. It's really part of that. And then take the extension where you're, in fact, having coaching conversations with partners and vendors who are outside the organization. That's where you know that you are well up in the maturity on the coaching continuing model. So an idea of what that looks like. And again, let's open up a poll and just get some feedback from folks on the line in terms of where you are today. I'm curious around what brought you to this conversation, what's keeping you here at this point. Where are you in your organization when it comes to this maturity model? And Sarah, if you want to launch this again for us, that'd be terrific. Now this time you can only vote for one. And don't forget that there is the off the chart that you can choose if you're not yet there. Thanks for taking the time to do this. Trying to be comfortable with the silence, but I'm looking forward to seeing the results. So we'll just give you about another 30 seconds. We've got a nice big crowd here today, so thank you for doing this. Okay, let's call it here. Let's take a look at these results. Okay, so thanks for those of you who are here today, about 16% who are just investigating, not quite into the coaching realm yet. A lot of you here because you're at that first stage with the some individual executive coaching happening across your organization. That's terrific. And I'm assuming and hopeful that you're interested in learning about how you can bring more coaching into the organization. And we see that, ad hoc is the next highest and then strategic. Congratulations to those who are at that strategic level. I'd love to hear more from you as we get into the Q&A as well. So that's terrific. Thanks for giving that to us. And I think that, there are so many who are at that stage who may not have really embarked on creating a coaching culture or bringing coaching into the organization in a more meaningful way than you are today. But the realities of today is that I think the coaching will be a really big part of how we can move forward. Thank you. Terrific. Okay. Let's keep going then. I wanted to end with a couple of slides on, so how do you actually create these coaching capabilities? And then how do you sustain it in your organization? So let's talk about a few first, just around building that coaching capability. Of course, any major strategic initiative starts with leadership. It starts from the top. It starts from a recognition that coaching skills are important for moving the organization forward. And that hopefully those same leaders will role model the behaviors. They'll share their stories of how they're going or how they're moving along in their own journey, becoming stronger coaches, and what that looks like for them. So it does start with the leadership. And we're seeing many organizations from a mindset perspective wanting to very quickly get at some foundational language and some foundational skills that really set expectations around what coaching needs to look like in the organization. So common language around frameworks, around skills, around approaches to coaching, coaching as leaders for others in the organization, and really getting good about saying, okay, this is what coaching looks like. It's the asking, not telling. This is what coaching, this is what we're trying to replace in terms of being directive, right? We want an inclusive environment. This is how coaching can help with that, for instance. So those two things right up front, really setting the stage for building coaching capability and doing so successfully across the enterprise. Learning architecture. There's a lot in this one bullet, and it's really important that as you continue that journey to build intentionally coaching capability across an organization, that you're clear on what you're looking for. Because quite honestly, you may have internal coaches that are on the ICF certification path or ICF certified already, and they'll have one set of expectations, they'll have one set of requirements in terms of how you develop and grow their coaching capabilities and the community that they have to support each other going forward. For leaders who are coaches, you're going to have a different set of expectations for them, and therefore a different curriculum and a different way of measuring the impact that that's having on your organization. You may have a third community or more, for instance, around the OD or the HR community. They often have somewhere in between where they're coaching more than just their own teams, but they're not doing full-on 3 or 6 month coaching engagements, but they certainly need to be the stewards. They need to understand coaching at a higher level than other leaders across the organization. So even if you only had those 3 communities, you'd have different curriculums, you'd have different ways of developing their skills and capabilities and measuring whether or not you've done what you need to do for those different communities. And so that learning architecture is really important. There may be a foundation that cuts across the entire organization. It helps to set the mindset. It also helps to create the common language and the connection points between those levels. But you're going to want to differentiate as you get into the nitty-gritty of what do each different role that's involved in your coaching environment really need to know and understand. Practice is really important. And so some opportunities that we have for development, we build in lots of exercises and application. Coaching is something that you really do need to get your 10,000 hours in a way, right? There really just does need to be a lot of coaching to build the confidence, to learn, and to just create consistent, strong coaching capabilities across an organization. So building that in as you're building people's capabilities is tremendously important. And then the momentum, right? Anything, again, that's an important initiative for an organization. It's important to measure and to track, to celebrate the successes. Again, never, never, never divulging anything that would be confidential. And there is often confidential information shared in a coaching relationship, but more about the status. How many people are getting coaching, at what levels, in what communities? How's it contributed to improving engagement? How's it contributed to improving retention? How's it contributed to improving profitability or innovation in the kind of context that we have today? So those are some of the really key things that are built into creating the strategy for increasing coaching capability and rolling it out. And we see that over and over again. The organizations that are paying attention to these 5 things are most likely to be successful in building that capability. But it's not enough just to build it, of course, like anything else. It's the tough work is to sustain that focus so that it's not the flavor of the year, but it's something that you maintain as part of your organization going forward. And that requires things like establishing communities where people can get together and can really share. They can stay focused on the conversation of what it's like to be a coach-like leader, for instance. Where are you doing really well? Where is the organization supporting that? Where are you having more challenges? And you'd like some peer coaching to help you get over some of your own barriers and challenges. How can we recognize the level of effort that's going into really creating the coaching culture in the organization? So those communities are really important. The resources and tools, job aids, opportunities to go online and get a refresher on things. Those types of resources, incredibly important, again, for any kind of learning that you're trying to do, certainly important from a coaching perspective. A communication platform to connect people. We love to use technology to be able to make sure that you have access to others that you can have that kind of conversation with. And then, of course, because you want to move up that continuum, if you're really going to sustain the coaching capability and advance the coaching culture, if you will, you want to see coaching embedded in your other processes. So pretty skip through some of those, but you can see the importance of once you've built a lot of that coaching capability in an organization, the work's not done. You're going to have to continue to sustain the focus on it and make sure that people have the opportunity to continue to grow and develop their coaching skills. And for those coaches who are on the line, I know that they would support me with the statement that, you know, being a coach is like anything else. You want to continue to learn and grow and develop to improve in your own craft. So one more slide, and then we're going to turn it over to the questions and answers. So please get your questions in. If anything here has sparked a thought or you want to dive into it a little deeper, happy to do that. I will share with you that some of the organizations that we're working with are upfront, like some of you who are not yet on the chart or limited use of coaching right now. It's about changing the culture and what is that strategy and what can it look like. So really defining and then implementing what the coaching culture can be. Other organizations that we're working with now are really at that place where they're putting together the learning architecture and they're rolling it out so that it cascades through the organization, that there are effective connection points between the senior leaders and the internal coaches and the OD group and leaders as coaches, that is aligned, those dots are connected, but that there's a true leadership architecture, learning architecture built into how they're moving forward to do so. So wow, I've done a lot of talking. I'm ready now to turn it over and see if we can find some questions and answers. I think what I'll do is I'll stop sharing my screen so that we can not have to look at just the big question mark. And I'll start to look at what we've got coming in here. There's a few. Do you feel that you have to have a good mentoring program in place before an organization can move to a coaching culture? I don't think that the two need to go hand in hand. So the short answer is no. A coaching program and a mentoring program are actually quite different. They can be very complementary, but you can have really great coaching skills and build a coaching culture without necessarily have mentoring. Mentoring is a great add-on, especially when you're looking for the wisdom and the expertise of your senior leaders or even external mentors to support leaders in your organization. But to truly get to that ask, don't tell, to the, the truth talk, that may come more from a coaching conversation and enhancing the coaching culture of an organization differently. So I wouldn't say that you need to have the mentoring there first. I've seen lots of organizations start with coaching and then over time introduce mentoring. And I've seen organizations have only one or the other, or go reverse, mentor to coach. Okay, my organization believes in coaching. This is from Karine, but they do not believe in internal coaches. I'm a certified coach and they don't want to utilize my efforts, nor is their budget for external coaches. Any ideas for how to convince the leaders that any coaching is better than no coaching? It's a great debate, and I know that some organizations are really stuck that internal coaches are more challenging because of the relationships, right? And others are big fans that internal coaches really build the culture of an organization. So I think it's important to try and define where external coaching or coaching only as leaders is important and where an internal coaching capability could really be helpful. Where we've seen it work really well, and all you have to do is go to ICF. There are a number of organizations who've won Prism Awards for building their coaching culture, for instance, and they've done so because they've built great internal coaching capability. They try, I think, to really make sure that those internal coaches are not coaching, obviously, people who work really close to them. And what they see as the benefit is not only great coaching, which to your point, everyone is better with a coach. We totally agree with that. But they're less expensive potentially than using external resources if they have the capacity and there isn't a large opportunity cost there. May really engage the employee if they love to coach, and this is some way that they can give back. But they also know a lot already about the context of the organization, the strategies of the organization and the industry. And so that ramp up may be very helpful for some types of coaching as well. So that would be my advice, is to really be clear and to try and have categories for, what would be the ideal scenario where you would want to use internal coaching and what would those benefits look like. Okay, thanks. I'm seeing lots come in here now. Can you provide an example or explore briefly what coaching would look like for onboarding employees? Wow, and especially right now, I think of how tough virtual onboarding can be. Yeah, it is a great way of making sure that coaches can reach out, be that objective person for an individual, help them really figure out what their 90-day plan needs to look like, co-create with them what that plan is, help them think about who are the stakeholders that they need to be engaging and learning from, where are the influencers in the organization, to be really thoughtful about moving through an effective onboarding program. A coach can be very helpful at thinking that through, brainstorming with them where they may get the information that they need, and helping them work through any internal or external barriers to them effectively implementing that plan. If for no other reason that they feel that they can be very transparent about where they're most nervous and what they're most challenged by, rather than having to share that with a new colleague in a new organization, which can be, quite difficult to overcome for some. So I think those are just a few of the great ways that a coach can really help to define what that onboarding experience and onboarding plan needs to look like, hold them accountable to going through it, not just get caught up in the whirlwind of the new job, and to be that sounding board for them that is completely objective and not intertwined with perceptions about whether or not they're going to fit in longer term. Great question. I love that. And we actually have done all sorts of different types of coaching programs, not only for new people joining an organization, but also for those important transitions as you move into your first leadership role or into an executive role, whatever that is, really being mindful about that and having a buddy, having a coach to work with you through that, that period can be so helpful. See great experiences there. Okay, so is the idea that we offer coaching to people managers and up? If we segment our audience by role within the learning architecture, how can an individual contributor move up? Really great question. First of all, coaching does not need to be limited to any particular level or person in the organization. Everybody's better with a coach. So individual contributors do very well if they get coaching. So that's part of it. If they're learning coaching skills and maybe you want to focus, everybody has to be careful with their resources on people leaders, then you're just looking for the potential and the interest and the aptitude for coaching. And then as they move into that people management level, they start to get more of the development. That's what I've seen most frequently. And then if you've got a common foundation of capabilities and skills around coaching, a common framework and common language, then as that individual perhaps moves from being, I'm going to say, only a people leader into maybe an OD role where they need to have advanced understanding and stewardship of the coaching practice and the coaching culture, that's one thing. If they're moving into becoming an internal coach, again, they're going to continue to leverage and build on those core skills and capabilities that they started with. So that's where you really can see the individual grow and build on what they've got. Hope that helps. Can a coach leader learn with, walk side by side, not top down, with those that they are coaching? So I think what I'm hearing there are two things. One is if I'm in an actual program to learn how to coach, would I want to do that with people that are reporting to me? And then also, can I be learning how to coach at the same time that I'm leading others? So I just want to make sure I've got that right. So I'll talk to the first one first, because we do hear this several times when we're setting up cohorts for developing coaching skills. When there is a lot of practice, we ask people to bring in their real life coaching scenarios. And so there can be a challenge if you've got a mixed cohort of leaders and people who report into that level of leader to feel really comfortable, because they're trying to bring their coaching scenarios. And of course they don't, if it's a difficult employee or a difficult situation with the team that they really want to work through, that can be uncomfortable. You can work around that, but that is certainly a consideration when actually developing the coaches. I think otherwise, we're all learning and evolving at the same time. And so can I learn to be a better coach side by side with my other people on the team who are also learning? Absolutely. I think peer coaching is tremendously important to give each other feedback, and to support each other as we grow and we develop. I think that being transparent about learning how to do this and getting feedback around, did that feel like a coach-like conversation, is just part of the learning process. So we don't have to wait for the perfect time. We just have to, start along the journey and commit to growing as coaches. Okay, terrific questions coming in here. Thank you very much. How much of their time do you see CEOs devote to culture change initiatives? Oh, that's a lot. Okay, I could shift the question to how much time would we love to see CEOs devote, how would we like to see CEOs devote to culture change? That's such a difficult question to answer. I don't know that there is one answer. We've surveyed CEOs at different points in time around what their agendas are all about, and most often it's about some sort of transformative change that includes culture. May not be driven by only a culture change, but they know the culture needs to evolve with their modernization, their digitization, and their transformation initiatives. So I think that it's on at least most of our successful CEOs' minds on a relatively regular basis around how will the changes we need to make strategically come to life through culture, or where will culture get in the way of us being successful doing that? And I'm gonna stop with that for now. Okay. How does an HR team manage or begin looking at introducing coaching into the organization? Great question. So I'm going to start with the point of, you've got to make sure that there's a case for it in the organization, and that anything that you're going to start to invest in introducing into an organization, in my mind, needs to have a hook back into the strategy of the organization. Today, it's pretty easy to find that hook, because there's so much going on that I think coaching skills and capabilities, helping leaders to be better, or helping leaders to improve their coaching capabilities, there's no better time than now to really be able to make that case that strategically enhancing coaching capabilities is a good idea. And secondly, you need to have the willingness to invest in this, right? So if you can make the case that it's a good idea, then you have to be able to make the case that it's enough of a priority, you can make space for it. And then you either need to consider the different types of ways you can roll it out. So we've seen great success in organizations find pockets with willing leaders who are very excited about the concept and are willing to pilot and learn and start to demonstrate how it can have an impact in the organization. That can take time, because of course you have to go through pilots, you have to collect data, and then you have to build and have the snowball go forward. If that works for your organization, of course, a tremendously effective way of doing it. And you can start with, again, thinking about that leadership architecture. Do you want a very basic foundation that will help to shift the mindset, really get people interested at first, and then get into phase 2, where you get into deeper skills and you're continuing to build new coaching muscles as you go forward. So that's the pilot route. What we've seen a lot of other organizations get into is saying, look, we want that foundation and we need it more quickly than waiting for that. So we're going to start with something that are key foundational skills. If I think back or track back to those 6 coaching skills that I put up front, it might be all 6. It may be a subset of those that we just really want to get people working with now. We want to give them some basic skills, some basic language, some foundational frameworks that could be across the organization. So we're going to roll it out across an enterprise for all leaders at all levels. Starting from the top down is always a nice way of doing it if that can work into your organization. And then again, you can build off of that as you go forward. If everybody has that foundation, then you can find and build your learning architecture to really hone in on different expectations in different communities. So either pilot with a group and really see the impact of that, measure the impact, and then roll it out more broadly. Or I think what we're seeing more often today is a more enterprise approach. There's an urgency that we feel in some of these organizations. I want to start with the basic foundation skills and then work from there. Is coaching effective in a team environment or an individual basis? Yes, it's not an or. Coaching is actually terrific one-on-one, obvious reasons. As a parent, I remember my kids in swimming lessons or any group lessons that they were into, and at some point along the way, they needed some one-on-one attention to really help them progress and advance in their capabilities. So that one-on-one attention, you just can't beat that. So coaching is definitely effective in the one-on-one, but coaching at a team level can really have a broader impact, and where we do so much of our work in teams can really change the game. And we do a lot of work with team coaching at the top of the house with special projects where teams need to work together to accomplish organizational goals, helping them to align on what their goals and objectives are, what they really need to be focused on, helping them to understand the dynamic within the team, and really coaching them through how they need to move forward. Not every one-on-one coach is a great team coach, and I would say that probably not every team coach is a great one-on-one coach. So you want to think about the skill set that you're applying to work with those two different communities. Great question. Again, team 2021, the ICF conference in Toronto, perhaps some of you were there, was just held over the last few weeks. And great conversation about the importance of team going forward. And the guest speaker there spoke about a need for 150,000 team coaches globally to be, developed and cast into our organizations going forward. So I think there's a tremendous understanding that coaching not only at the one-on-one level, but at the team level will be important. Okay, we have time for a few more here. Does it make sense to have a coaching training for 2 to 3 hours, or is it necessary to have a prolonged training as budgets, approvals, and time investment could be a strain? Yeah, there's reality that has to come into all of this, right? So you can work on building your coaching capabilities in increments of time, right? In 2 to 3 hours, you're going to get a little bit of awareness. You might be able to work on a coaching skill. You're not going to have the application time that you really need to kind of get into that. So I would suggest that if you only have limited budget, you think about, which of your coaching skills you want to focus on, what parts of the organization, right? So it may not be for everything. And then how do you build in some kind of a practical way for coaches in development to practice and to get feedback? Because it is something to be really confident. You want to have that practice. You want to have people giving you some feedback so that as you start to apply it with your teams, with other folks, that you're feeling confident, you're feeling capable about being able to do that. Truly to be able to, just focus on the leader level, for instance, so leaders as coaches, 2 to 3 hours is just going to get their toe in the water. But if you're thinking about how do you create the momentum too, and the real draw for more, that will definitely incite them to come back and say, I want more of that. I want to get better at that. So I would never say that, don't do it if that's all you have the capability for. Just moderate your expectations and look for ways to add on to that 2 or 3 hour thing for some practice and some peer coaching, or a way for people to continue to connect and support each other. You got to start somewhere, right? And that's the practicality for most organizations. Okay. So could you talk a little bit about your experience of coaching for top talent internally, and what are the merits or demerits of identifying internal untrained coaches internally? Okay, so the first one, just in terms of, experience of coaching for top talent internally, there's no one answer to this. I do see more often in organizations that top talent throughout the organization can work well with internal or external coaches. That can be done equally as well. And again, it depends on the size of your organization and how safe the coachee feels. If the coachee doesn't feel like they have a psychologically safe environment with their coach because their coach is from within the same organization, they're not going to get as much out of the coaching. So that's really, to me, really paramount. And when you talk about top talent, and as they rise through the organization, this is the group that you're really investing in, and you want to make sure that they feel very special. They want that they're feeling that they're getting the best that you can afford to give them for their development, and that they can take the most advantage of that. So the only drawback in terms of internal coaches for your top talent, you have to think about how safe can they be, and that may really be a dependency on your organization and the size of it. The merits or demerits of identifying internal untrained coaches internally, I'm not exactly sure where you're going with this, but I would say if it is about finding people to train to get them ready for it. It's a great thing to do, again, if you can really see the application for internal coaches in your organization. But I would never let loose untrained coaches on your top talent. Again, I think it's really important that they get the best development that they can. And so invest in getting a few people trained, or use some external resources to really give them the benefit of a great coaching experience. Okay, so one or two more questions here. Let me just see what I can find. Thank you for all of the questions that have come in. Someone's asked about the science of coaching. Go check out the Institute or the International Coaching Federation, the IOC. There's great resources around the science of coaching, around how to learn about coaching, and that type of thing. Really terrific. It's a great place to start. Anyways, we are closely aligned in terms of our methodology and approaches with the ICF, and are also involved with the IOC. And probably, what do we got here? Okay, so we often hear about coaching employees that are having challenges, and how do we make sure that it's not only about the challenges? How does it show up that you're coaching for performance, not for non-performance? I think it's a long question, so I might have skipped through pieces of it. I think when we think back about coaching, it did have a bit of a stigma that only those who were in trouble got a coach. And when you reflect on that, it can be kind of a backwards way of looking at things. When you want to spend your precious resources on the people that you're going to bet on for being the leaders of your future. We really very rarely now see coaching focused on individuals who are in trouble, that you're trying to save. It's really way more often that coaching is focused on those individuals that are your top performers, or are being, are in important positions, who are looking to advance in their leadership journey. So the coaching that we see is largely focused on coaching for performance, not trying to coach non-performers. Just really need to get rid of that myth that's out there about what coaching is really for. And I would say, I'm trying to find a short question here that might have a short answer that we can squeeze one more in. How do companies structure their coaching center of excellence, something like a PMO or community of practice? Is it within HR under talent? That's not a short answer. Sorry, come back to me with that one if you want to have a longer conversation. And here's a question: how many coaching sessions do you feel are necessary to make a change in a leader's competencies? We generally say that it's may or may not be about the number of sessions, but it's about the period of time. So 6 months is generally the amount of time that you need to look for in a focused coaching relationship to actually see some behavior change that's going to be sustainable. So that's certainly the rule of thumb we have there. And so with that, we are at 12 on the button. I want to thank you again for joining today. I hope you really got a lot out of this session. What can we say? Today is unprecedented. Leaders are being asked to do unprecedented things. We need to support them. We need to provide them with the coaching that they need. And we know that the kind of leadership behaviors that are required right now can really be enhanced with coach-like behaviors. So thrilled to see the interest in developing those coaching skills, thrilled to see the interest in providing coaching within your organizations, and happy to continue the conversation at any time. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Have a wonderful afternoon, everybody, and thanks again for joining us.